What is up, guys? You are tuned into the Casual Wrestling Smackdown Post Show. I am Nerdy D, and if you are listening to this, you are part of the CWC, and this is the show where we join together to overreact and answer the biggest questions coming out of Friday Night SmackDown this week. But before we get to that, do me a little favor, tap the like button. It only takes 2 seconds, and it lets the algorithm know that you're listening, and it helps us grow the casual wrestling army as we continue to chip away at the IWC stronghold over online wrestling conversation. Without further ado, let's jump right into housekeeping this week. The current wave of casual wrestling merch is about to leave casualwrestling.com. So if you've been eyeballing any of those t-shirts, now is your chance to jump on and order that. If not, they will be gone forever. And starting November 1st, there will be a whole new wave of a winter collection of casual wrestling merch. So be on the lookout for that. Also, reminder, new show alert, the Casual PLE experience with myself and Milwaukee Mike will premiere the week of Survivor Series. We will do predictions, hot takes, break down the card, everything you want to know about Survivor Series will be on that show, so mark your calendars. That is officially happening. All right, let's jump right into it. Question number 1 this week. Nerdy D, can you make the argument that LA Knight should win the world title at Crown Jewel? I can. I can make the argument. I don't know how compelling I'm going to be, but I can make the argument. I could make a weak argument that LA Knight should be the guy to take the title off of Roman Reigns. Here's the thing. If you guys remember, we talked about this. When it was first announced that LA Knight was going to be the guy challenging Roman Reigns for the WWE title, I got excited. I even asked you guys to make sure to bring me back down to earth when I overreacted and I go over the edge and I start talking about LA Knight is the guy to beat the tribal chief. It never happened. I never got to that point. I just don't think the energy ever got there for me. I don't have the energy that LA Knight is the guy that's going to take the title off of Roman Reigns. Now, I want him to be. I'd love for him to be. I'm all in on LA Knight, but what Roman has going right now is still bigger than what is going on right now. And this isn't meant to be negative. Don't immediately jump on me for being negative, because the buildup to this match has been absolutely fantastic. I think that everything that I've seen so far between Roman Reigns and LA Knight, the chemistry is beautiful. It's a 5-star build. I'm not mad at it. I'm just not getting this is the time that Roman loses the belt vibes from WWE right now. If every match on SmackDown had the type of build that LA Knight and Roman Reigns have had in the last couple of weeks, SmackDown would be the greatest experience in all of wrestling. But there's just something holding me back. And I don't know what it is. Maybe I have status quo bias. Like maybe I've just been beat into submission at this point by WWE, and I'm programmed to believe that Roman Reigns has to win. Roman Reigns has to keep moving forward as the champion. And maybe it's just my fear of the unknown. Maybe I'm just scared to really think about what happens once Roman Reigns isn't champion anymore. Do I think LA Knight could be successful if he was to win the WWE Championship? 100% yes. I absolutely do. Do I think the world title picture would immediately become more interesting if LA Knight won the championship? Yeah, hell yeah, I do. I definitely think that things get spicy when Roman loses the belt. But do I think this is the moment? I don't. I can't wrap my head around that. Now, would Roman Reigns losing the title at Crown Jewel set the wrestling world on fire? Hell yeah, sure. Everybody would love it. You know, it would be, I think at this point, there is a fatigue with Roman Reigns. This is why I think we all hate WrestleMania booking. Yeah, I keep talking about it, but there's a definite thing that is WrestleMania booking syndrome. The fact that we all know that some combination of Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, and The Rock are going to headline WrestleMania, and more than likely that's where the streak has to end, that could come off a little bit boring. The reality is that if WWE had some real balls to them, this is the way I would book it. I'd pull the trigger right now. I'd let LA Knight win the title. I'd have LA Knight be your next big star. And then at WrestleMania, You have the opportunity to do Cody Rhodes versus LA Knight for the WWE title. Roman Reigns will survive a loss to LA Knight. Roman Reigns could absolutely survive the loss to LA Knight. And then at WrestleMania, you could still do Roman Reigns versus The Rock for head of the table. And there's a part of me that believes that ending the streak at WrestleMania at this point is almost too cliche. We almost all expect it so much now that I don't want it to happen anymore. I was actually one of the biggest kind of cheerleaders for the idea that it has to happen at WrestleMania. That's the only place that something that big can happen. But is that really what we want? If you do Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns part 2 at WrestleMania, I almost feel like WWE might be booking themselves into a lose-lose situation in some regards. If Cody Rhodes wins, it won't feel as organic as it could be. It'll almost feel like it's what we expected. We knew the story had to come to an end. We knew they weren't going to have Cody lose twice. And I think there's going to be this exhale from the WWE universe where we start to kind of talk like we saw this coming. But then you have the flip side to that. And let's say Roman Reigns beats Cody Rhodes again. Let's say they want Roman Reigns barreling towards Hulk Hogan's record. The fatigue is going to set in. The fans are going to start becoming fatigued with Roman Reigns. And Cody Rhodes would immediately be booked into an absolutely terrible spot. So I don't feel like either outcome in that situation is optimal. In some regards, one way or the other, one of your major stars is going to walk out of WrestleMania in a worse position than they walked in. Now, realistically, let's just play hypothetical here. LA Knight wins at Crown Jewel. You immediately create a new star. In one night of wrestling, you create an absolute monster. The guy who took down the tribal chief. Roman Reigns can recover. Said it before, I'll say it again. Roman Reigns can recover from a loss to LA Knight because immediately the next night you have Roman Reigns come out and demand a rematch, and before LA Knight can answer, Rock's music hit. The Rock comes out. He immediately says that there are things bigger than a WWE title to handle. He rips off the Ulafala off of Roman Reigns, and boom, you've set up Roman Reigns versus The Rock. They can disappear. We don't want to see them again until we start to build for WrestleMania. That absolutely protects Roman Reigns. If that happens, nobody remembers that he lost to LA Knight the week before. And now something special happens. You get to test the waters with LA Knight. You get to see if all of the hype is real. You get to see if LA Knight can sink or swim. How does he look carrying the company through your cold winter? Because we're entering. Winter's coming. It's cold here in San Antonio, Texas today. Winter is here. And if he stays above water, then you have Cody Rhodes win the Royal Rumble for a second time if you want, and you set up Cody Rhodes versus LA Knight at WrestleMania. That all works. It's simple booking. Now, here's the easy part of this. If LA Knight starts to dip in the ratings, if it looks like, this kind of magical run was a flash in the pan, you can immediately have Roman Reigns show back up at any point in time and squash LA Knight in a rematch and win back the title, because I don't think that the streak is that important at WrestleMania, and I definitely don't think it's as important as most people are assuming it is. There are bigger stories for Roman Reigns at WrestleMania than whether or not he's the champion for 4 million days. The bigger story will be Cody Rhodes finishing his story or a fight to be head of the table. Either of those is not dependent on Roman Reigns having his streak intact. So yeah, here you go. There it is. I made the case for LA Knight to win. It's just based on unpredictability. It's based on surprising everybody. It's based on just not doing what we all think is going to happen in the next 6 months and creating ultimately possibly your new biggest star in your company. And let's be clear here. While I think in my heart of hearts, I absolutely believe Roman Reigns is winning this match. He moves forward as champion all the way until WrestleMania. I'm rooting for LA Knight. Like let's make that clear. I'm going to be on the edge of my seat for every near fall. My heart is going to be pounding. And And the truth of the matter is, I will be a tad bit disappointed if LA Knight doesn't shock the world at Crown Jewel. I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel about that. Question number 2 this week, Nerdy D. What did you think of the return of Bianca Belair on the microphone? Do you think she did enough to shut down the haters in the IWC for right now? Kind of have a twofold answer for this, because I don't think the IWC will ever want to hear what I'm about to say, so I'm going to have to say it in kind of 2 different ways. Number 1, she absolutely shut down all of the IWC horseshit this week by coming out and cutting a babyface promo that had a little bit of grit to it. That's what you guys been asking for, right? You want a little grit? She gave you a little grit. She dialed it in. And when Bianca is dialed in, when she's chasing, when there's a clear goal in front of her, there's very few women in this business better at drawing people in to root for her. Now, I like something that she did. She used the word vengeance. And I think it was a subtle way to take jabs at the IWC. It was a subtle way to take jabs at the people who overreacted to Bianca coming back in kind of the same fashion as a babyface. And it was kind of a subtle way to take that typical smile that Bianca has, that laugh it off personality, and make her feel even more like a superhero. You know who gets vengeance? Batman gets vengeance. Bianca Belair is WWE's new Batman. She's not here for revenge. Revenge is for bad guys. She's here for vengeance. Vengeance is for superheroes. The definition of the word vengeance is punishment inflicted or retribution exacted for an injury or wrongdoing. That's exactly what Bianca's doing here. So there's the grit. That's the grit you guys been looking for. This is what you whiny ass IWC guys all wanted. But if you look at the internet, if you get on the internet after SmackDown, this still isn't enough for these little whiny ass bitch motherfuckers. It's just not. They want more. The problem is, I think the IWC, and this is dead truth, I think the IWC is afraid of a strong woman who commands dominance the way Bianca Belair does. I think they fear that. I think these beta-ass males just are completely scared of a woman like Bianca Belair who has presence in the ring. I think the IWC, because they tend to be beta, they don't like powerful women. What they want to see that prototypical kind of nerd out female wrestler that cheats, that can be bad. It feels all these weird perversions for the IWC, which I just don't understand. And this absolutely says more about the weird fucks in the IWC than it does about Bianca Belair and the way the WWE books her. But I see the real problem. I was able to see the real problem now. The problem is that in the eyes of the IWC, the basement dwellers, Bianca Belair just absolutely has to lose. She can't win. She's the good guy against the IWC fantasy that is Io Sky. And I don't know how I didn't see this sooner. I don't know how I didn't put 2 and 2 together. When Bianca Belair was going up against Becky Lynch, the IWC had so much disdain for Becky Lynch that they were able to jump on the Bianca bandwagon. But now that Bianca's going against this indie darling Io Sky, she's the IWC's worst nightmare. She represents everything the IWC wants to hate. This is like John Cena showing up to beat up the AEW prophet Kenny Omega. This is a nightmare for these guys. And it bothered me all week. It absolutely bothered me getting on Twitter all week and looking at the tweets and these just ridiculously ignorant tweets about Bianca Belair. Like or dislike the way she is booked in the ring, I would say it's almost impossible to say a bad thing about her personally. But the scum of the IWC has found ways to drag her through the dirt. And here's the thing. Before the IWC jumps on here, because this is what they do. This is the game the IWC likes to play. They like to act like I'm creating a narrative. They like to act like, oh, this guy, he's making this up. Nobody's talking shit about Bianca Belair. Oh, I brought receipts. Here's some tweets I'm going to read to you guys that were written about Bianca Belair that are going to prove that the IWC is absolutely apeshit. Here we go. Here's one from Matt Tenney. Matt Tenney says, Bianca Belair is boring and overrated and overhyped. She's the Bill Goldberg of the women's division. Think about it. She can't cut a decent promo to save her life and only has a few moves in the ring, and she needs her opponents to carry her through every match. Hashtag Team EO. He ended it right there. Team EO. IWC fantasy. That's what they want. That's what they like. That's their perversion, right? Here we go. Here's one from Alk Pandal. Alk Pandal says, since the goofy, overrated ponytail has returned, I didn't watch SmackDown Live today. That means I got to fast forward through her boring ass. Bianca Belair sucks. No, Alk Pandal, you fucking suck. You don't know what good wrestling is if you don't like Bianca Belair. But here's the last one. This is the best one, right? And this name is absolutely perfect because this is the most IWC fucking name you could have is Bryan. The name Bryan just fucking smells like IWC. And so this guy's Twitter handle is Bryan All Elite. That just drips of IWC. And he writes, short tweet here. He writes, boring EST. The boringest. Bianca Belair is boring. Come on, man. This is the IWC rhetoric. This is what's being pushed out right now. This is worse than politics. There's an agenda. These IWC sheep hear the latest narrative that's being passed around. It's like they have fucking pamphlets that they're handing to each other on Twitter, and they all just run with it. This is the new cool thing. The new cool thing is to dislike Bianca Belair. But IWC, tell me this. What more could Bianca Belair do? Like, what do you want her to do? Besides turning heel, which she's not going to do, what could she do as a babyface that would make you change your opinion? She has numerous top matches in the women's division this year. She has held the title probably longer than, I don't know, maybe every other female in the women's division on any brand. You know, this narrative is fucking corny at this point. The better question here that I want to turn around and ask the IWC is, what has EO done to protect the title and give WWE a reason to stick with her through Crown Jewel and through the winter? I'm sorry. I don't mean to throw EO into the fire here, but this is just the nature of the business. You come after one person and typically there's a reason. And I did this with Big E a couple years ago when I talked about there are certain wrestlers who are very good at what they do and we can send them praise, but they're not world champions. And I'm sorry, EO is one of those people. EO has had opportunities to connect with the audience. She just doesn't connect. She's failed on a consistent basis. WWE doesn't have the confidence in her to give her hardly any clean victories. So everything she's doing consists of something with Bayley involved or Dakota Kai involved or damage control in some form or fashion. They help her, and the one time that she was given ample time in the proper stage to get over with fans with Asuka, they just put on a kind of meh. It was a meh match. And ask my boy DJ Wavy D. We ain't pinning that shit on Asuka. We're not putting that blame on Asuka. That's an EO problem. But the real question I have for any Bianca Belair haters is convince me why WWE shouldn't put the belt back on her. What's best for business? Convince me that's not best for business. Convince me why at Crown Jewel, WWE doesn't put that belt back on her and sell tickets and move merchandise and sell belts and keep the female and young women's audience happy. You explain that to me and explain to me why we keep the EO Sky Project going. Question number 3 this week is, Nerdy D, reports on the internet are saying that John Cena's run on SmackDown is most likely done after Crown Jewel. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate this run and how will it be remembered in the full spectrum of his career? So I have to refer back to a couple weeks ago, more than a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a couple months ago, when it was kind of announced that John Cena was coming back. I started fantasy booking. I did a typical Nerdy D thing, got excited, started fantasy booking, and I put John Cena into a few different situations, and none of which I expected to go the way things actually went when they brought him back. This latest run for John Cena has been, I think the best way to say it, it was a humbling experience for us as WWE Universe. And I think it needs to be appreciated because Father Time is not kind. And I don't know how many times John Cena is going to be able to reach back into this bag and put together actual runs like this in the WWE. And as a matter of fact, if I'm being completely honest, there's a good chance this is probably the last legitimate run from John Cena that we see, maybe ever. I think WWE knows this. I think John Cena knows this. I don't think he's going to say it out loud, but I think that most people kind of get the feeling that this is it. This is the last run of consecutive, reliable appearances on a WWE show where John Cena kind of puts together a full-on story arc. Now, will he be back for occasional one-off matches? I think so. I don't think that ever ends. Will he come back and do favors for WWE, Triple H, Vince McMahon? I think so. I think he's got enough in the tank that when the situation calls for it, he shows up for 2 or 3 weeks. But John Cena has made it clear that he is committed to Hollywood, and the plan as far as John Cena is concerned is to stay in that world. So having said all of that, I'm not ready to place a number on this run just yet because he hasn't officially said goodbye. I don't think the Hollywood strike is officially over. There's always the chance that we get one more appearance, one more run all the way to Survivor Series. So seeing that that's not that far away, I'm not ready to place a number on this just yet. But even if Crown Jewel is it for John Cena for the time being, and that's the last match, I don't think I can place a number on the run until I see the grand finale, till I see what's up WWE's sleeve to send John Cena back to Hollywood. Because up until this point, all John Cena has done is what every aging superstar claims they're going to do in the later years of their career, and that's he's used his time unselfishly to put someone else over. John Cena came back to pass a torch to LA Knight. And time should remember this favorably. And it won't. People won't remember that this is something that most superstars don't do later in their career that John Cena showed up and did. So Crown Jewel, Cena has to go in and take on Solo Sikoa. Now, this story can end in a multitude of ways, right? I'm not going to pretend that I have kind of my thumb on the pulse of this and know what WWE is doing here, because I think there really isn't a wrong answer to how you book the outcome of this match. I think it can be booked multiple ways, and it will end favorably in the eyes of the universe. But I can speak to how I would book the match. And I think that the way I would book the match is to have John Cena get the victory. Have John Cena beat Solo Sikoa. He can end that kind of lost streak, and then allow Solo Sikoa to post-match beat the life out of John Cena, essentially putting Solo Sikoa over. And if that happens, and I feel strongly that there's a chance that could happen, what does that mean for John Cena's run here? Let's talk about what he did. He came back and he did a Saudi Arabia thing with Seth Rollins. We didn't get to see it, but we know it happened. He did a tag team match with LA Knight against the Bloodline. He showed up on NXT to spike the ratings. He seemingly put LA Knight over in a promo in the ring with Roman Reigns, and then he proceeded to set up his match with Solo Sikoa, which is yet to be seen. I mean, looking at that in a vacuum, I don't know how much emphasis will be placed on this little run that John Cena had right here, but I think that we had to know coming into this, John Cena wasn't going to wrestle on a weekly basis. We were going to get 1 or 2 official matches and a lot of John Cena talking. So if I'm throwing a number out right now, it's a 6. That's a 6. I think that's fair based on what we see. But this number comes with an asterisk next to it because here's the thing. There's factors at play in the next week that could boost this to a much higher level. Let me tell you, if John Cena puts on a classic match, just a good old John Cena fun, good time at Crown Jewels, I think you add a point. You go from 6 to 7. If he beats Solo and then takes a beating and essentially ends his losing streak, but ultimately puts Solo Sikoa over, making Solo look extremely tough and dominant at the end of that match, I think that gets a point. We take that 6 and now it's an 8. And I think if by some miracle LA Knight beats Roman Reigns, then the work that John Cena did putting over LA Knight the last couple of weeks, that should give him the last 2 points, and we call this run a 10. But there's just so many variables that come when you're talking about John Cena. His presence alone pumped life back into WWE and to SmackDown. I think, once again, this booking and his return shows that there's different levels to how we should appreciate superstars that come back, especially like John Cena. Paul Heyman said it best when he said, you may not be the best in the ring anymore, but you damn sure are still one of the best on the microphone. And the reality is, when you talk about legacy, when this is all said and done for John Cena and we talk about legacy and we start throwing around names for the GOAT conversation, you could talk about your Ric Flairs. You could talk about your Jerichos, your Austin, your Rocks, your Hogans. But I don't know that you, with a straight face, could say they ever hit the peaks that John Cena hit. And I say peaks because I think it was multiple peaks. I don't think it was just one time. I think John Cena hit the top, fell, hit the top, fell, came back and did it again in different ways. And I think that when it's all said and done, this is going to look like a small, insignificant blip on the spectrum that is John Cena's career, but I think it's one that ultimately should be studied by other aging wrestlers as a graceful way to come back and put other talent over and kind of leave just like a final cherry on top of your career. All right, last question for this week. Nerdy D, do you think that cinematic matches and vignettes have a place in WWE in 2023? Absolutely, man. I think that the way Pretty Deadly have done it for the last couple of weeks has reminded me how much I miss this element of wrestling that has absolutely been missing for the last couple of years. The last couple of weeks, WWE has aired these cinematic packages and these altercations between Pretty Deadly and the Brawling Brutes, and it's made me fall in love with backstage storytelling again. It's creating these worlds that just can't exist when you strictly do things inside a wrestling ring. And I think we absolutely need so much more of this. The issue is, during the pandemic, we got a lot of these cinematic matches shoved down our throats, and I think a lot of it was really, really bad. A lot of people won't say it, but there was a lot of it that was really, really bad. It was produced poorly. But whoever is producing these latest ones for Pretty Deadly, they understand that less is more. They understand that there's a sweet spot and that it just adds to the story. We haven't seen a lot of Pretty Deadly and the Brawling Brutes in the ring, yet this is one of the stories I'm most invested in on SmackDown. I miss the old backstage stuff. I miss the Attitude Era when things would take place kind of around the host city, like The Rock throwing a title over the bridge, or hardcore matches that spilled out into like a famous location of the city. If I was Triple H, if I was WWE, I do more of this. I like this. This builds backstage characters into a story. And I think that ultimately this is what Triple H is doing. I'm seeing a good balance of Triple H cutting these, like he did it with Ludwig Kaiser. He's done it with a couple other people where they kind of explain some history of a character, but then he's also mixing in these Alpha Academy and these Pretty Deadly segments that are fun to watch. So the more of that, the better. And I'll be fair here. I'm not going to give full credit to WWE and Triple H on this one, because I can acknowledge that Adam Cole and MJF did this very well for the last couple of months. So that was what kind of started that reminiscing for me. But I just think that, when it's done in WWE, I tend to recognize it more. I think that MJF and Adam Cole were definitely a little bit of a proof of concept that I think WWE was probably watching. But in 2023, when this kind of stuff is used correctly, this cinematic kind of backstage material, it amplifies these stories so much. And this is why I get upset that Roman Reigns isn't featured in more packages like this. I understand the argument, and this is an argument made all the time in my comment section, that less is more. The less a guy shows up, the more special he seems on WWE programming. And I think that argument is a little bit of bullshit. I'm gonna call a little bit of bullshit on that. I think that the less a guy wrestles, he might feel special when he wrestles, but I don't think absolutely not showing up on TV is a good thing for the product, and I don't think it's a good thing for the wrestler. So I think that when a person can be entertaining outside of having to either wrestle in the ring or hold a microphone and cut a promo in the ring, that takes you to another level. And I think things like this could ascend Roman to some fun places that he hasn't been before. I still think at this point that Baron Corbin's last run with JBL suffered because there was no real context. It would have thrived if they gave us video packages every week of Corbin training with JBL in his private gym, in a ring in his mansion, and showing that JBL was kind of, using Baron Corbin as a whipping boy. I think that all could have worked. I think that if you take Grayson Waller and Austin Theory and you double down and you revert back to that social media stuff that Austin Theory was doing, and you start letting them do some like prank videos or some YouTube style, like those guys on YouTube that people just absolutely can't stand, that should get their ass beat every week. Let them start doing that kind of stuff backstage. And I think you're going to rebuild Austin Theory and Grayson Waller into dislikable heels. I hope we start to see this a lot more from WWE. It feels like Pretty Deadly and Alpha Academy have a pretty good grasp of how to use it, but I want to see this more from other people who may be a little uncomfortable at first. The more cinematic we get, the better. WWE should start to feel like it's its own universe, like Marvel or DC, and let's start letting go of some of this reality-based shit that we've been getting for the last couple of years that I think has run its course. It's time to make wrestling fun again. Like, hashtag make wrestling fun again. That's a thing. I like the direction Triple H is going with this. All right, let's do a little bit of news, then we'll get out of here. Former WWE star Ronda Rousey set to make her Wrestling Revolver debut. Saw a lot of people upset about this. I don't understand. I mean, good for Ronda, man. I don't get why this is a big deal to the IWC. They're trying to make it like WWE lost out on this. WWE used Ronda Rousey as much as they could. They got the most out of her. She ended up putting Shayna Baszler over. I don't think this is some big indictment against WWE that Ronda Rousey shows up at some indie show. Like, Ronda Rousey is a draw on her own. She doesn't need WWE. WWE doesn't need her. I think that Ronda Rousey kind of fell through the cracks between, Triple H trying to take over and Vince McMahon trying to, establish a little bit of his dominance in the company. And I don't think they could ever quite get the story arc together that sold us on Ronda Rousey being a legitimate WWE superstar. They just didn't have the fabric to keep it together. And they fucked up the booking of Ronda Rousey. So good for her to kind of get a restart, to get to go and do it on her own. Let Ronda have fun. Like, it's good for indie wrestling. It's good for wrestling fans. I will say it's a tad bit hypocritical that the same IWC assholes who sat and ripped Ronda Rousey apart and made her life miserable when she was in WWE are the ones now pretending to lose their shit when she shows up in indie show. But that's typical IWC hypocrisy. Good for Ronda. I'm glad she's found something that makes her happy. Sting reacts to Ric Flair's surprise AEW Dynamite debut. So old ass Ric Flair has shown up in AEW. It is not often that something excites me on this level. Like wrestling, I enjoy it, but it doesn't typically kind of excite me and kind of cause the old ticker to light up. But this got me. I'm excited about this. And it's not because I give two shits about Ric Flair. It's because of what I think is coming, what I hope is coming at least. Tony Khan has teased over and over again these big dream matches. And this last week he teased that he had something that had never been done before in wrestling. And that ended up being the surprise for Sting, which was Ric Flair. Tony Khan, you can't make this shit up. How has that never been done before? Tony Khan told us a couple months ago that we were entering the new era of AEW. He said that. Go check the tweets. Check the receipts. He said that. The optics now, if you're just a casual fan and you turn on AEW, the new era of AEW, the optics are what you will see. Edge, 49 years old. Christian Cage, 49 years old. Sting, 64 years old. Ric Flair, 74 years old. And Darby Allin in an arm sling. That's what he's putting on Dynamite. That's what Tony Khan thinks is going to set the new era of AEW wrestling on fire. And I am praying to the wrestling gods that this whole Ric Flair thing is leading to Ric Flair versus Sting in a retirement match, because why not? At this point, that would be the most Tony Khan thing you could do. Look at Dynamite's ratings. Like, I don't want to do this every week, but look at Dynamite's ratings. They were abysmal again this week. And this is what Tony Khan thought was going to solve that. AEW did 774,000 views on its flagship program. And I don't want to hear the NBA arguments. I don't want to hear that from the IWC. Raw goes up against Monday Night Football every week, and that doesn't get to be an excuse. Plus, NXT was up against the opening night of the NBA, and they still were able to beat AEW again with 787,000 views. Now, like I said, I don't love the idea that every week we're going to dive into this head-to-head booking rating thing, because actually, if you want my honest opinion, I need AEW to find its feet and stabilize as a solid third brand of wrestling, because when AEW is rolling and humming as the third brand, it pushes WWE. It forces WWE to stay on their toes and stay creative. But this ain't it, Jack. That ain't it, Tony Khan. It's not Ric Flair. It's not Sting. I don't know the numbers, but I hate to tell AEW fans, y'all let Tony Khan blow MJF versus Kenny Omega on Collision with a 3-day build. And I'm guessing when we see these numbers come out, nobody was watching. Same shit. You got to do better, Tony Khan. You absolutely have to do better. Last story of the week, Bryan Danielson's injury status is a very real situation. So Daniel Bryan got injured in his match on Dynamite against Orange Cassidy, and some guy that the IWC is absolutely going to destroy me because I don't know him and don't care to know him. But it was originally believed that the injury was a story, and is now being reported that it is an orbital bone break. Now, this I'm not about to do what y'all expect me to do and go off on like AEW is this dangerous company and they're, they have no rules or regulations about what goes on in a match, because I watched the spot and this was absolutely just accidental, routine, punch, misfire, normal wrestling shit. This could have happened to anyone. And I saw a lot of overreaction from AEW fans, and it's funny how quickly they jump on both sides of every argument. They overreact to things. I saw this subgroup of IWC fans saying that Daniel Bryan is it. He's done. He's too brittle. It's time for him to hang it up. But that's not the part that caught my attention. That's not what got me thinking. There was this other subsection of the IWC that decided to go against the other half of the IWC who screamed back at those guys. They just defend Daniel Bryan no matter what he does. He can do no wrong. It's a freak accident. Bryan Danielson's the best in the world. I'm not on either side. I don't really give a shit. I just think it's hilarious when the IWC starts eating each other, when they go at each other. I saw the spot. It looked normal to me. I think it could have happened to anybody, but here's my thing. This is the thing I find interesting. How can the IWC continue to shit on CM Punk and use excuses like, oh, he's broken down. Even if he shows up in WWE, he's worthless. He's a walking injury. But in the same breath, they watch Bryan Danielson get hurt over and over with concussions, torn shoulders, broken orbital bones. How do they say that with a straight face, knowing that these are just things that happen to guys when they get in their 40s? Like, we have to find some level of footing for what you guys yell when you're on Twitter. Bryan's what? He's 42 years old. And I know the IWC loves to tell me, this is a thing they love to tell me when I call guys old, but they love to tell me that guys in their 40s are just hitting their prime in pro wrestling. That's not what it looks like to me. What it looks like to me is that guys that have been doing this a long time on the indie scene, 40 is about when their body starts to break down. It's at this time. And unless you're a freak athlete, guys in peak physical form like LA Knight, like Bobby Lashley, it's pretty safe to say that you can start to expect these injuries around the age of 40. So, if I'm Bryan Danielson, I call it here. Why keep putting yourself through the rehabs and through the struggles just to break or tear the next thing and to kind of watch AEW implode around you when optimally they should have made Bryan Danielson champion when he first came over to AEW. They dropped the fucking ball there. But Bryan Danielson strikes me as a guy he's going to wrestle until he can't walk anymore. I absolutely believe that. I don't think that he's going to call it quits, and that's fine. That's his decision. I just find it to be kind of a sad reality when wrestling guys kind of wrestle past their expiration date. But that's all I have for this week. Make sure to watch the Casual Wrestling Podcast that will be restarting in November. The Champ and the Chick that will post every week. The Monday Night Raw Post Show and this show, the Friday Night Smackdown Post Show. Hit the like button. Share this episode with someone you know. Make sure to check out casualwrestling.com for all of the audio versions of this show, all of the video versions of this show, and for the merchandise section of the website where the last season of t-shirts is coming down November 1st. Until next time, keep it casual, my friends. I'm tapping out.